Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're stepping straight into the shadows to unpack a truly grim, dark, gothic fable of power, delusion, and honestly, some pretty intense existential dread. This isn't just a spooky story, though. It's a profound dialectical exploration using Nietzschean and Fichtean philosophy to dissect the very nature of existence and control. We're going to examine a creator who basically thought he could become a god, only to end up building his own prison.
Behold the silence of my perfection. I have cleared the groves and shattered the boundary stones until every local altar is gone and only my temple remains. We are jumping right into the mind of the puppet king here, and this chilling declaration absolutely sets the atmosphere for us. The king is announcing what he fully believes is his ultimate triumph, a total divine monopoly. He's flattened this diverse, vibrant world into a single, silent domain where his decree is literally the only truth. But, as you'll see, this so-called perfection is hiding a terrifying philosophical trap.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Part 1. Thesis: Seeking the Absolute I. So, our fable kicks off with a sovereign creator. We'll call him the puppeteer at first, and his obsessive quest for ultimate frictionless control. He looked at the strings binding his creations and saw them only as shackles, right? Just lines of resistance, forcing him to negotiate for every inch of power. He desperately wanted to transcend that messy reality. Now, to really understand what this puppeteer was trying to pull off, we have to look at the philosophy of Johann Gottlieb Fichte. Fichte argued that a self, what he called the absolute I, can only truly know and measure its own existence by striving against an external limit, which he brilliantly termed the not I. Think of it this way. Imagine you're a giant standing in a perfect, absolute vacuum. There's no wind against your face, no earth to resist your step. You wouldn't even be able to feel your own limbs. Self-awareness fundamentally relies on encountering those external limits. You literally need the friction of the not I to know that you, the I, actually exist. But the puppeteer completely missed this point. He believed that by cutting those cords of friction, the rebellious strings of his creations, he could just ascend into pure, unadulterated command. He mistakenly thought that zero tension meant absolute freedom. Actually, scratch that. He thought it meant godhood. Yet as the puppets fell silent, he discovered the absolute horror of an empty room. Without the not I, those rebellious, unique movements of his creations providing a boundary, he began losing the very context of his existence. He wasn't ascending. He was descending into a void.
And to maintain this massive delusion, the king engaged in a horrific process of what we can call cultural castration. He systematically erased the diverse, pluralistic past. He purged the temples, cut down the sacred poles, and completely demonized his divine neighbors, transforming legitimate peers into monstrous abominations. He basically flattened history into a singular, seamless narrative, just to build his forced vacuum. He branded the vibrant, messy tapestry of the world as heresy, simply to protect a super-fragile, unearned monopoly. But, every thesis demands a response. So, moving on to part 2, Antithesis. The truth-telling demon's critique. Enter the truth-telling demon. This figure arrives like a shadow to give the king's blinding light its shape, and he is here to shatter the king's delusion with a massive dose of sharp Nietzschean reality. The demon exposes this perfect order for what it truly is, using the parable of the painted stone. It's a contrast between two opposing forces. On one side, you have the king's Apollonian illusion, a ruler absolutely terrified by the wild, unpredictable growth of his kingdom, who replaces every living flower with a smooth, painted stone. He calls it perfect, seamless order, but the soil is dead. It's sterile and rigid. On the other side is the Dionysian reality of life. It's chaotic, fragmented, diverse, and just blooming with multiplicity. The king's order isn't life at all. It's the cultural castration of life. He swapped the dangerous, beautiful bloom of reality for a dead, unchanging stone.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how the demon uses Nietzsche's concepts to expose the king's true nature. The king's divine monopoly isn't a sign of strength, no way. It is the textbook mechanism of slave morality. A true, noble master welcomes struggle, right? They enjoy the tension of competing claims and they honor equal peers. But the king? He possesses an incredibly weak will. He was just too frightened to live alongside the chaotic multiplicity of the world. So what does he do? He burns his neighbors' homes and demonizes them as evil just so he can sit back and claim his own monopoly is good. It's entirely a historical fabrication born out of deep, deep fear. And that brings us to the demon's ultimate, devastating diagnosis. You sit as a puppet king dancing on the strings of your own deep insecurity. Ouch. By completely erasing his peers and destroying the not I, the king didn't conquer the world. He committed spiritual suicide. He just retreated into an empty room. Because he couldn't tolerate the weight of shifting perspectives, he became a prisoner to his own insecurity, proving once and for all that his total control is actually the ultimate symptom of cultural exhaustion. Which brings us to our tragic final act. Part 3. Synthesis, the bound puppeteer's cage. This is the final alchemical transformation of our creator. He really thought he was ascending to godhood, but instead he's been transmuted into a figure of pure decadence and exhaustion. His individual essence just dissolves right into that forced vacuum he created. His initial search for this frictionless sovereignty didn't lead to the ultimate freedom he imagined. Quite the opposite. The puppeteer was assimilated into a singular narrative that he didn't even write himself. By eliminating the friction of truth and silencing the chaotic multiplicity of his own creations, he lost himself entirely. He mistook the dead emptiness of a paved theater for absolute existence. And the king's shadow has now completely rewritten the puppeteer's memory. What started off as a genuine, vibrant, albeit difficult creative struggle has been turned into a sterile, frozen monument to the king's own deep insecurity. The puppeteer isn't a creator anymore. He's just become a vessel for resentment, pressing down upon his own shoulders with a weight that is far more hollow than his initial ambition ever was. He froze his own tapestry simply because he couldn't bear the weight of real existence. The whole fable culminates in this bleak, final realization from the puppeteer himself. Doomed to dance eternally in a silent, lightless cage, pulled by a shadow that cannot tolerate the weight of shifting perspectives. The tragedy is absolute here. The puppeteer's hands are now permanently bound by the exact same strings he once sought to cut. In his desperate quest to become the unchecked, absolute I, he destroyed the not I that gave his life meaning, leaving him with nothing but a silent, lightless cage of his very own design. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really chew on. Are you flattening your own narrative just to avoid the friction of truth? Look, it is so easy to look at the messy, chaotic multiplicity of our own lives and wish we could just snip the strings, paint the stones, and create this perfect, seamless order. But as this Gothic fable shows us, that friction, that is exactly where truth and life actually exist. Without the resistance of the world and the people around us, we aren't finding freedom at all. We're just building our own empty room. Think about the strings you're trying to cut in your life right now and ask yourself, are you truly seeking freedom? Or are you just retreating from the beautiful, fragmented reality of the struggle? See you next time.